Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar co-hosted by SmartLabs and Dataxis. The presentation will address the different aspects to take into account when migrating to an advanced multi-screen IPTV service and the characteristics of the three platforms, which are Android TV operator tier, and Linux. With an objective to provide an overview of the consequences of such deployments for customers and for pay TV operators. The webinar will last around 30 minutes with an additional 10-15 minutes at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. And you can type your questions during the session. They will be answered at the end. If you move to the next slide. I'm Saiba Nebier, analyst at Dataxis. We specialize in market research and conferences on media topics such as television, OTT, and telecom, for instance. And Gary Hamer, SVP Sales at SmartLabs, will present the core of the presentation, unveiling the challenges and opportunities of set-top box platforms. And I will let him give you more details about his responsibilities and about SmartLabs activities.
Thank you, Saiba. My name's Gary Hamer. I'm the SVP of Sales and Business Development at SmartLabs. I've been involved in IPTV for over 15 years, and I now lead the commercial activities at SmartLabs. SmartLabs is a leading provider of software solutions that drive multi-network and multi-screen interactive TV platforms, and we design and manufacture feature-rich set-top boxes. Today, SmartLabs solutions deliver content services to over 6 million subscribers around the globe on multiple devices, from set-top boxes to mobile phones and smart TVs. Okay, Saiba, back to you.
Okay, so before giving the hand back to Gary, we wanted to provide some elements of context to understand why external platforms such as Android TV or Linux can be so appealing to pay TV operators. So the first trend that we thought was worth highlighting is the surge in connectivity access in almost all places around the world. What we can see here is that if the trend is global, not all regions are experiencing the same growth in fixed wired access. Broadband access and affordability are almost completely reached in North America and in Europe, which are showing the highest penetrations at 85% and 81%. And it's lower in the other regions, mostly because of the lack of infrastructures to deploy DSL or fiber. But what's also important to note is that in these regions, mobile internet access is taking over, providing connectivity to a growing number of people. So in the coming years, it's expected to remain prevalent in Middle East Africa, for instance, and also in certain parts of Asia. And broadband access and the way it's accessed, all this has consequences for content distributors when it comes to developing OTT services, either as a standalone offer or to enhance an existing content distribution service, such as a pay TV service. And this is what we see in the next slide. We see that the number of SVOD services has been increasing at a fast pace in the past years, and it's been gaining ground among users. So here we counted around 130 paying SVOD platforms worldwide in 2014, and they exceeded 300 at the end of 2019. And this number doesn't include linear OTT or AVOD, the ad-supported services. And we see on the chart on the right that the demand has been growing alongside. SVOD subscribers reached around 830 million in 2020. So it's a very impressive growth. In particular, if we compare the figure with the total number of pay TV subscribers worldwide, which amounted to around 1 billion at the end of 2019. And but of course, the gap that we see between the two group of actors is wider, remains wider in terms of revenues, as SVOD services are lower priced, and the overall penetration of the services is also lower because of another emerging trend that we observe, which is the bundling of services. While households will choose a single pay TV subscription, when it comes to SVOD services, on the contrary, they will aggregate platforms more easily. And these aggregation aspects are particularly interesting for pay TV operators, which can, as they were doing for traditional linear channels, start to aggregate direct-to-consumer services, OTT services, such as Netflix or Amazon, for instance. And this is what we see next. We have here some examples of partnerships that were implemented between OTT platforms, SVOD platforms, and pay TV operators. And this has become a strong part, a growing part of the platform's strategy, Netflix strategy, for instance, in the past year. And we estimate that this platform concluded more than 100 deals as of today. And this is a part of the part of the aggregation model towards which more and more operators are turning. So one of the features that is expected by their customer is the provision of a wide range of services and options. So to take advantage of the new technologies, to compete with a growing number of competitors, the pay TV operators have also had to shift towards more interactivity and advanced services. And this is particularly the case for operators distributing content through OTT and IPTV. The most advanced accesses, which, as we see here, are substantially growing worldwide because they represented around 30% of total subscriptions in 2020. But these improvements in the offer also carry challenges to be implemented successfully. We listed part of them in the next slide of the presentation. And here, this is a list that highlights some of the features that can be expected in the newest set-top box deployments. For instance, an increase in definition like 4K or HDR, a recorder, whether it is directly in the box or in the cloud, and the access to additional libraries of content through transactional VOD or SVOD, for instance. And these customer experience improvements have non-negligible consequences for the content providers. For the OTT services, they are expected to develop their platforms on all kinds of devices that don't have the same standards. So this requires costly investments. And operators, if they want to be able to provide the best experience and to distribute the trendiest apps, they must be attractive enough to platforms and implement the required technical deployments. And this is part of the reasons that can lead operators to turn to third-party services like Android TV or Android TV operator tier, for instance. But on this topic, I will let Gary take the hand to explain more precisely the issues at stake, the challenges and potential risks of such decisions.
Thank you, Seva. So as Seva's slides have shown, we enter the 2020s with our industry facing transition from linear multi-channel TV services to an on-demand, possibly app-based environment. But one thing that hasn't changed is a reliance on the set-top box. For the last at least 10 years, analysts have foreseen the end of the road for the set-top. But in the operator space, they really are still going strong. For the next 20 minutes or so, I'd like to talk about the challenges being faced today by operators and service providers as they make decisions about the future direction of their still set-top box-centric TV platforms. And hopefully I'll also highlight some of the benefits, not just the challenges, offered by each of the different routes that are currently open to them. As Seva's slides have shown very nicely, the use of non-linear, typically app-based content services have exploded in recent years across the globe. Another snapshot of data I can show you here from VectorStock and Dataxis that shows a huge SPOD subscription growth, hitting 1 billion users, which is just unbelievable really from where it started not so many years ago. And this growth is being driven by the 18 to 24-year-old bracket. And these figures here show that they're watching, on average, 39 minutes of SVOD content every single day. I know from my own experience, my whole family are currently watching more on-demand content than ever. And I'd also challenge the 39-minute daily average. In my house, I think it's much higher. But the trend is very clear. I think it's clear for everyone to see from these first few slides, really. And I'm sure we've all seen the figures in recent months that show that the growth has accelerated during the recent or the current pandemic. A very interesting point of discussion for the future is what will happen as the pandemic passes, and questions regarding customer retention, service quality will need to be given a lot of thought and potentially a huge investment if this really is the new normal. But that's for another day and another webinar. So let's start by looking at some of the challenges being faced by operators as they think about the future of their TV services. But actually, before we do that, I'd like to raise one significant complicating factor. As I'm sure the sales and business development people on the call will confirm, many operators already have a TV service of some sort as part of their multi-service offering, sitting alongside their fixed line, broadband, and mobile offerings. This means that most operators already have a legacy TV platform, including legacy set-top boxes already deployed in the field and sat in their customers' lounges. This makes the complexity of the decision-making process even greater, as that existing customer base must be considered at every stage. Okay, so let me present a few of the major challenges. As we've seen from the earlier slides, the critical challenge is how does an operator meet their subscribers' demand for access to new content today and in the future? Which new content service will become the must-have service in the next 3 to 5 years? And does the operator want to include that in their service? Does the operator want to become a super aggregator? As suggested by Seva in her earlier slides, we're seeing those partnerships with Netflix and Amazon, and the larger operators becoming or taking on that super aggregator role. And they become a gateway to these third-party services. Or, as we're also seeing in the market, is do they want to focus on their own content offering and services and leave their customers to use other devices to access these premium services, whichever services they may be in the future? Is there potential to migrate the legacy customers to their set-top boxes and their set-top boxes to the new platform? If they get this wrong, that subscriber base, as well as the business that the base underpins, can disappear almost overnight. Will the new platform allow the operator to manage every aspect of the service and deliver the customer experience they're really looking for? For example, can they manage exactly what content is available on their platform? Or are they obliged to offer unhindered access to apps offered by others, including their competitors? Also, something that for many years has been taken as a given, can they freely customize and brand the service to reinforce their brand values? There are also business and operational challenges. For example, is there a solution that meets their budget? Not only the initial expense, but ongoing commitments over multiple years that some platforms demand. Do they have the technical in-house skills to make the project a success? These deployments aren't trivial, and resources, either in-house or external, are required to maintain them. And which path will allow them to offer a competitive service in the market? An important factor here is what solutions have their competitors already launched onto the market. In some markets, we find there's an arms race developing, and first mover advantage is significant. And by making the correct decision, an operator can block their competition from entering the market if they feel the table stakes become too high. So as the operators tussle with these complex questions and challenges, we find solutions are consolidating around 3 set-top box platform options. We've got Android Open Source Project, or AOSP, Android TV in either of its flavors, and we'll talk about both, and the traditional Linux platform. Each of these set-top box platforms offers opportunity, but also have their limitations. The balance of these pros and cons will be different for every operator in every market. And this is what makes the situation so interesting. It really isn't at the moment one size fits all or one solution fits all. In the next slides, I'll highlight the key points of each platform based on our experience, and I hope that will help inform the decision-making process. So let me start with AOSP. Android Open Source Project is the basic set-top box platform offering from Google, and it's technically the foundation of the other Android-based set-top box solutions that we will discuss in the next slides. In a nutshell, AOSP gives an operator access to the Android operating system, which can run on what you could call commoditized set-top boxes, which are available from a wide variety of vendors. These set-top boxes can be low cost, but I do raise a flag for the level of technical support available from some vendors. It may not be the responsive or conversational level of support operators have become used to, but perhaps this is another new normal that we'll all just have to get used to. Also, as AOSP is basically just an Android set-top box operating system, third-party Android applications, so video, music, weather, news, social media, etc., may all easily be included as part of the service. However, the rest of the solution must be developed by the operator and their partners, and the effort required to implement an AOSP solution is very similar to a traditional Linux-based solution that we'll also discuss a bit later on. AOSP does come with a list of really important restrictions that should also be considered. In most situations, the AOSP platform cannot be deployed on legacy set-top boxes. These boxes are typically Linux-based and have limited computing power and very limited memory, which are just not suitable to run the Android platform. With AOSP, an operator cannot offer access to the Google Play Store. It's quite strictly prohibited and managed. Therefore, the management of applications becomes the responsibility of the operator and the app owner. So legal and commercial agreements are needed between the operator and the app owners, which is an overhead that should be considered. And finally, and important when you think of the slides at the beginning of the presentation, premium third-party app providers such as Google for YouTube and Netflix will not typically allow their applications to be included in an AOSP-based solution. At this point, I'd like to just present a quick case study of one of our customers where we've introduced AOSP. Primetel is a competitive multi-service operator in Cyprus with an established DVB-T IPTV hybrid deployment with Linux hybrid set-top boxes. Several years ago, SmartLabs migrated their first TV platform from a simple legacy Linux solution to our feature-rich platform with full HD Linux hybrid boxes. However, in the past 12 months, we've worked with Primetel to introduce an AOSP-based solution. And as this AOSP solution cannot be deployed on those Linux hybrid boxes, a new Android Ultra HD set-top box has been introduced. During the planning stages, Primetel gave a lot of thought to their existing customer base, who we'd already migrated once from platform A to our platform. And they chose to upgrade the set-top box UI on their hybrid Linux service at the same time as they introduced the AOSP platform. As a result, the look and feel of both services were refreshed and aligned. and we worked very hard to minimize any functional differences between the legacy service and the new platform in order to allow Primetel to manage the pace of change and to work within their very strict budgets. Their vision, as we see it, is to phase out the hybrid Linux set-top boxes over a period of time, removing DVB-T from their offering in favor of the lower cost full IP AOSP platform, reducing their costs both operationally and their capex in the longer term. Next, I'd like to move on to Android TV. We've probably all seen an Android TV solution at some point. This is the offering from Google that's seen on Android-based smart TVs, such as those from Sony, and retail streaming set-top boxes and sticks. As a result, the UI on these retail devices, known as the standard Google launcher, is familiar to many people. For an operator, Android TV addresses many of the challenges raised in my previous slide. It does include access to the complete Google Play Store, giving you access to thousands of apps. It includes access to a suite of other Google apps, including voice search and YouTube. And the need to develop your own UI is removed, as the operator is obliged to use the standard Google launcher. This all sounds very nice, but for an operator, I feel that a number of limitations really need to be given a lot of thought. As is this really an operator grade service as we know it from our traditional thinking? Or is it really just giving access to third-party applications? Let me run through a list of the restrictions, which I think sort of expose my case. The standard Google launcher cannot be customized. So an operator cannot add a logo or colors, change the layout, or promote their own content in the most prominent positions. So how does an operator distinguish their offering from the product that is available on retail devices with the same look and feel, exactly the same look and feel? The operator must provide access to the complete Google Play Store. As a result, an operator's customers will have access to services from their competitors, and the operator is not allowed to hinder their use in any way. The operator must also negotiate agreements with the premium third-party applications. So whilst the third-party applications are pre-certified, you still need to negotiate as an operator an agreement to use them within your service. If those negotiations are unsuccessful, your service will result in a less attractive offer than is available on the high street, because in the retail market, these devices come with the premium services pre-installed. Google also stipulate that the set-top box software must be updated by the operator 4 times per year. So this is both a support burden for the operator, but it also suggests a technical progression that may lead to older set-top boxes not supporting new features. We all have old devices at home where the apps are no longer supported, and we know how frustrating that is. And that's not something we're used to in the operator space. It also goes without saying that legacy set-top boxes cannot support Android TV. So whilst addressing lots of the challenges identified with AOSP, there are some significant concerns that need to be thought through by an operator before selecting Android TV. If I move on to Android TV operator tier, this is an operator-focused extension of Android TV that delivers all the benefits of stock Android TV and addresses one of the main limitations. So with Android TV operator tier, a custom launcher may be created. This allows the operator to customize the customer experience with logos, branding, and layout changes. Google does apply a limited number of restrictions, but generally the operator can customize the UI's appearance as they see fit. This allows an operator to differentiate their offering, which is a tangible benefit for an operator in a very crowded market, and allows a more traditional operator service to be created. Unfortunately, this flexibility introduces another less positive consideration. As the standard Google launcher is not being used, Google insists that the operator's customized solution completes a certification process. And this requires the solution vendor to perform thousands of tests and then submit the results to a third-party test facility for the results to be verified. This process needs to be repeated with every new release from Google. Remember, the operator is obliged to perform 4 upgrades a year, and also for any material changes to the custom launcher. This is a burden on budgets and resources that needs to be considered in your decision-making process. This is also an overhead for Google, which is important. So in my experience, Android TV operator tier is not available for every operator, and Google apply quite strict selection criteria. They don't say no, they won't support it, but it's a process to go through, and I think that needs to be considered. At this point, I'd also like to mention data. There's a requirement from Google to have access to usage data in both Android TV and Android TV operator tier platforms. And this needs to be well understood by the operator in their decision-making process. SmartLabs is working with a large Central European operator progressing through this process today, migrating from Linux to Android TV operator tier. And we're also in dialogue with a large Asian operator who has an established stock Android TV platform and is now exploring the possibility of upgrading to Android TV operator tier. Both are very exciting, but unfortunately I can't say anything else about. Finally, I'd like to say a few words about what appears to be the least glamorous option, and that's the Linux-based path. Only a few years ago, this was the only option for operators wanting to deliver an IPTV service. As a result, most deployments have a deployed base of Linux set-top boxes, and no operator will want to ignore this important existing customer base and investment locked up in these devices, and the logistical expense involved in replacing them. Think back to the Primetel example I gave a little earlier. With a Linux-based set-top box, an operator has full control over their solution and their data. A modern solution for linear TV with on-demand features such as trick play, restart, network PBR, video on demand, recommendation and search can be delivered relatively quickly and cost effectively. Therefore, a very practical approach is for an operator to continue with Linux set-top boxes and update their UI with their legacies on their legacy set-top boxes, and where possible, offer new features and functions to these devices, and then deploy more up-to-date Linux set-top boxes for new customers. SmartLabs have performed more than 10 such operator service migrations in the past few years for operators across the world. So I believe this is a very pragmatic and cost-effective approach. However, the obvious downside for Linux set-top boxes is the lack of premium third-party applications. As we have seen, the demand for content is growing, so this limitation can't be ignored. In my experience, since the rise of Android TV platform, these premium third-party applications are almost impossible to secure for Linux-based set-top boxes. But it does happen, so it's not totally impossible, but it is a hard process. For completeness, I want to say a few words about the RDK, and this is a Linux-based semi-standardized platform driven by the tier ones like Comcast and Liberty Global. Our experience of working with the RDK was that we needed to recreate many of the features and functions that already existed in our standard Linux solution, which resulted in significant development investment that delivered an RDK solution, but no tangible benefit to our customer. So our RDK customer reverted back to a standard Linux approach for their next generation of Ultra HD set-top box. You can tell my experience with RDK has not been hugely positive, but on a recent call with an SoC vendor, they stated they'd seen an increased demand for RDK support from many operators. So perhaps this is one to watch during 2021. Okay, so let's move on to the migration. I hope you've seen the set-top box platform that an operator chooses will have a direct impact on the TV service they're able to deliver to their customers. Therefore, it's essential that operators really understand the impact of any decision they make. And we spend lots of time discussing these platform decisions with our customers and potential customers. So as a result of any set-top box platform decision that's made, the operator may need to migrate their existing customer base from one platform to another. And over the past years, we've helped migrate over 500,000 set-top boxes from legacy platforms to new ones, whether it be Linux to Android or others. And by the end of 2021, that number will be over 1 million. In our experience, the key for successful migration is to take a targeted and phased approach with a focus on customer retention and not immediate cost savings. For example, if you can align the launch of a new set-top box with new features for new customers with a service refresh for existing customers, then this will help keep most customers happy and typically allow the operator to maintain control of the migration process, both the pace and the cost. My personal feeling is that the operator market is currently split into two sectors based on the scale. Tier 1 operators are looking to control the TV through HDMI 1, and they want to become super aggregators, including as many services within their platform and reducing the need for customers to switch to different sources and view a specific piece of content. These are the operators I referred to in the opening slides. This makes the Android TV approach an obvious choice. An Android TV operator tier offers clear advantages to these operators in this bracket. However, tier 2 operators need to be more dynamic, flexible, and selective with regard to content, and they're looking to control all aspects of their service and manage costs and manpower tightly at the same time. Therefore, I believe Linux and AOSP approaches offer these operators the control and flexibility they're looking for. For operators of either scale, the question of existing customers with legacy devices needs to be considered in whichever set-top box platform decision that is made. This is a lovely slide from Dataxis, which summarizes how strongly operators in Europe and the Americas have adopted Android TV over the last few years. This chart represents the number of Android TV deployments as a proportion of the total number of deployments identified during the period. And it shows that in 2019, 43% of set-top box deployments in Europe and the Americas were based on Android TV. So this data really clearly shows that Android TV is rapidly becoming the favored set-top box platform with operators in Europe and the Americas. Just wrapping up, there's the final question of, do I see the end of the set-top boxes? This is posed every year, and I think for the last 10 years I've said not at the moment. I think we can see from the presentation that it's still at the center of many operator deployments, and the set-top box gives operators many benefits. So a known platform allows operators to maintain a high service level. The branded set-top box remote and UI in their homes drives loyalty. A very significant point is the cost of set-top boxes keeps falling every year, whilst the functionality and available computing power is increasing. So the set-top box can deliver better UIs and services for a much smaller investment. And that's keeping the set-top box ahead of the other platforms, which are vying to replace it. So as a result, I personally see the set-top box playing a key role in operator delivered TV services for several years to come. I have been saying that for about 10 years. And I see operators of all scales enhancing and augmenting their TV service with other screens, allowing their customers to consume content wherever and wherever and whatever screen they demand. So I'd like to finish off by just leaving this up on the screen and draw your attention to the future of the Google-based solutions. It's quite a big question. I was on a recent Google webinar, and the possibility of Google relaunching their own Google TV service was discussed. And it was neither confirmed nor denied by the Android TV guys on the call. So surely that would put them in direct competition with a retail offering with their current operator customers. But that's certainly one to watch. Okay. Thank you for listening. Saeva, back to you.
Yes. Let's see if there are questions. You can type your questions in the Q&A box on your screen if you have some. First, a question about the slides. So will the slides be made available? They will. They will be made available on our website, dataxis.com, and they will also be sent to all the attendees of the webinar. Then there's another question on the first part of the presentation. So it's, do you have any recent numbers on how the global pandemic has shown an increase in SVOD since March as people spend more time at home? This is data that we actually track in our database, and we're going to publish Q1 2020 shortly. And it's hard to answer generally, as it depends on the type of platform and the content that they distribute. It depends on the region. In some cases, in North America, for instance, it had a positive impact on SVOD actors, accelerating the cord-cutting trend. But in other regions or for other actors, the effect was limited. And it can be because the market also already reached saturation, because operators have implemented commercial action during the pandemic. So SVOD platforms didn't have the competitive advantage that they had before, or because the service remained expensive compared to pay TV prices, as it is the case in some regions. So it's difficult to give a general answer to this. There's another question for Gary. With ATV set-top box, based on your experience, do operators request an operator tier launcher, or are they satisfied with the Google launcher?
That's a very good question. They demand the operator tier, or they would like the operator tier launcher. Having the operator tier launcher creates a branded environment, a true operator environment, as we know. They have launched, and there are some very large services in Asia that have launched with just the Android TV standard launcher, and they are successful. But really, I struggle to see that in the same light as the operator tier service. I think with that, you're just giving access, you're driving broadband capacity over your network and providing access in the same way that a retail device can provide access. That you're not sort of reinforcing brand or building loyalty, doing all those other good things, primary things that a TV service does for an operator. So people have deployed and do deploy with just the standard launcher, but I think there is a real demand from the operators to be able to customize, to be able to reinforce their brand. So I would very strongly push people towards the operator tier arm, if that's at all possible.
Okay. There's another question from Norberto Armath. What do you think about what requirements do we have to ask for Android TV set-top box OEMs, apart from having the possibility in the future of changing the OS in the set-top box if Google changes policies or similar?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Google do change their hardware requirements quite regularly. So silicon that was suitable at the end of last year is no longer suitable to launch a service now. So they regularly change their minimum requirements for SoC. So Google, I can't talk for Google, obviously, but I think when you're talking to your set-top box manufacturer, understanding that they have a roadmap, that they're not just creating one reference box, and they don't have a history or heritage of creating these types of devices, and that their relationship with the SoC vendors, the likes of Amlogic or HiSilicon or etc., are solid and have a good firm base, because they will need to work very closely. And the SoC vendors are the key people to understand the roadmap of what's required, because Google are talking to those SoC vendors before they're talking to the factories. So personally, I find getting an update from the SoC vendors gives you a sort of a good overview of what's coming and where the direction that Google are traveling in. On the software side, there's that ability to update the Android firmware 4 times a year. Yeah, that's a real burden, and also to perform the testing and the relationship with Google's third-party test houses. So Google have put third-party test houses in the middle. So it's very much a relationship thing, I would say. So it's those third-party relationships with the SoC vendors, with the test houses, and with Google directly become very important. And that's obviously an overhead.
There's a question from Julio Ramos. With the introduction of ATV, are operators still renting the set-top boxes along with pay TV packages, or are some of them selling the boxes to customers?
Yes to both. We have customers that are bundling a basic set-top box in with the package, sort of a very mobile phone type package, where you get service and product and device in a single product that you pay for on a monthly basis. Some are offering it as an upsell, so they're selling boxes as almost as accessories, so you can buy additional boxes and subscribe to additional services. So very much a bit of both. Because the capex has dropped quite significantly, I must admit I'm having less rental and financing conversations at the moment. I think we're in a sort of a slightly healthier position with ARPUs and set-tops. Obviously, in the developing markets, that's going to be a different situation. So I'm sure the rental models or the lease models will still be quite prevalent in those regions.
So the questions keep coming up. Do you see an increase in set-top box manufacturers or a consolidation in this vendor market?
No, there's more and more and more every year. What we see is consolidation in the premium brands. So the traditional set-top box guys are coming together, but the Android set-top box is basically a well-defined hardware product where Google defined the bill of materials and they defined the spec, which can be built in any factory, whether that's in Asia or in North America or in Europe. So we're seeing more factory-based ODMs making progress in the market. So I would say the premium brands, you go back 5-10 years, those brands that were very prevalent in the early days of IPTV, they are coming together and moving into slightly different markets. But the factory-based producers, there seem to be more of those. So again, it's very much about choosing the right one and not just choosing the lowest cost one, because this year we've had issues with customers being offered set-top boxes with reclaimed parts, so reclaimed memory chips. We had reclaimed SoCs that have been taken out of old servers that had been dumped and reclaimed. So there's all sorts of practices going on with some of these factories, and especially with the virus, that's caused a lot of the smaller factories to diversify and to move into new markets to try and find an opportunity, which is where my heritage comment sort of really comes in. You know, understand where those boxes are coming from.
Janaka Zudazinga is asking, Google doesn't provide DVB software for ATV, does it?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It is. I'll take that question offline if I can, and I'll provide it with a proper answer. There is. I'll provide it with a proper answer. I don't want to mislead anybody on the call.
Okay.
There are Android TV DVB-T hybrid solutions out there, but the extensions come from the vendors, not from Google. So it's a mixed hybrid answer. So I'll come back with a written answer for it, if that's okay.
Okay. There's one last question. Anybody use wide-vine conditional access with ATV?
Well, yes, all of them. So using AOSP, everyone is using, all of our customers. We have 2 customers on AOSP, and we probably have, I would say, 10 customers, operator customers on Linux, all using Widevine. And on Android TV, it's Widevine and Play Ready are mandatory components in the ATV certification process, so it must be part of the platform.
Okay, so I think
that question.
Yeah. I think we answered all the questions. If you have more, well, don't hesitate to write us a direct message to continue the conversation. And as we said, the presentation will be shared with everyone on the website and directly via email. So thank you all for attending, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.